Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. We've got a very exciting video series starting here. Almost nostalgic, really. We're kind of running back the clock. I've been doing a lot of builds lately, as you all know, but we're going a little bit more classic for this channel, the stuff that I used to do for one series at least. We're going to be repainting a beautiful Keisel guitar. And this isn't just a basic repaint. I'm not just changing the color of it or something like that. This one's going to be fancy. It's going to be interesting. I've gotten basically full creative license over how I want to approach this. I'll show you what we're dealing with right now, but it's a matte black, the satin black that's kind of sheening up in a few spots. And the owner doesn't want it to look like that anymore. So this is going to be one of my last, probably two, at least for the time being, one of my last two commission jobs. And I'm going to have a lot of fun with this one. I think we're going to do some custom airbrush work on it. It's going to be like old times. Let's get this thing opened up and see what it looks like. So we will be doing basically a full tutorial, I think, here on, repainting a guitar, but we're also doing some airbrush work, and I'm not really the guy to teach you guys how to do airbrushing. I can teach you the basics, but I'm not qualified to instruct it, I don't think. But we'll cover that to some degree. So this is the guitar. It's gorgeous, but it's got this, I don't know if you guys can see this, it's got this matte finish with areas starting to buff up to like a semi-gloss, and yeah, the customer just wants something different. He wants more, So we're gonna do some work to this thing and make it a little bit more interesting. First step, we're gonna have to do at least a partial disassembly. We're gonna try to avoid disassembling too much of it. The less, the better. It makes things a lot easier. And avoids chances for things to go wrong. But we're going to take off the hardware that we need to, get her taped up, and then this is going to get the kind of work where you don't just start spraying. I'm going to have to start mapping out what we're doing on here. So let's start with the disassembly process. All right, let's start with some of the basics here, things that you're going to want. One, you can use power to help you speed up this process if you're comfortable with it. If you're doing a full repaint, then fine. But if you're not comfortable with it, then I highly recommend that you just stick to unscrewing stuff by hand. Less chance of messing it up by a long shot, all right? I've screwed up a guitar or two of mine and had to do a lot of repair work because I was being impatient. Now this is getting a full repaint, so I'll use the drill for this, but still, you want to be careful. Second, make sure you've got something to store your hardware in. I just have a little glass Tupperware here is usually what I use. If you are not well versed in this and you want to make sure you're keeping track of what screws go where and everything like that, if you haven't done 100 of these, then get a couple Ziplocs, label them, then put them in there. What else? Soft surface, always nice. You don't want to gouge your guitar, especially if you're just doing a simple repaint like this. I don't actually have to sand off any of this. I just need to scuff it up so I can paint over it. So if I don't do any damage, I don't have to worry about fixing any damage. And three, a neck rest is also very helpful. This one comes from Solo Music Gear. If you've been following my channel, you know this, but I have an affiliate link to Solo Music Gear in the description below. And if you buy something from there, it helps me out. So first thing I'm going to do is take off the strings here. These are locking tuners, of course. This is a very nice guitar. So I'm just going to loosen them off and then unlock them and pull them out. Simple as that. I did get a chance to try this thing out a little bit before disassembly, because why wouldn't I? And it was the first guitar I've ever played with a fan fret setup like this. It takes a touch of getting used to, but it's very cool, very ergonomic. I like it. I can't wait to build my fan fret. It won't be that long now, hopefully. All right, so we'll loosen off these tuners. And this is a Keisel. It's an expensive guitar, so I don't think I'm going to do anything to the headstock. I don't want to mess with that logo. It's not turning into, some kind of kit guitar that I can put my name on or anything like that. So I'm probably not going to do anything to that. Please don't ask me how to put a Fender logo onto a Squier. I've had too many people come at me with that one. I am not helping with that. All right, so we'll get these pulled out. This thing has a really nice individual saddle bridge, which is going to be slightly more of a pain in the butt than your usual bridge would be, but that's fine. Okay, we'll feed these through gently here. And because they were in the tuners, they've got little kind of hooks on the end, so you do have to be a little bit careful. Make sure they're facing the right way when they come out. And then they're not so bad. Obviously, we're going to be replacing these strings when we put this thing back together. I never put the same strings back on, but especially with a locking nut, I wouldn't. So just a little tip for you here, safety tip. Everybody probably knows this, but you know how your strings come packaged like this. They're in a circle and then they pull them through a couple times. Do that when you throw your strings out, okay? That's not just to keep them small. It's so that they don't spring out and hit somebody in the eye. It's a safety thing, and it's just the best way to package them back up. So do that and then chuck them. Now, this has direct mount pickups. There's no pickup ring, and that's nice because this means I can just tape these off carefully. I don't actually need to pull those out, which is good for me. I'm going to take my switch off of there and unscrew that, and I'll just kind of push that in a little bit, and that should be fine. Does this have a set screw in it? This guy's got a set screw, so I'll have to undo that, and then I can pull that knob off. Okay, that's easy. And then I gotta, of course, take that off, but I'm gonna do that after. First, let's start unscrewing some of this other stuff. So, strap buttons. To be very careful with these guitars that have angled headstocks. You can break them if you're not. Let's see what else we actually need to take off of here. We'll need to remove the bridge, which is going to be very interesting. Alright, so I decided to speed this up and switch to voiceover here to keep this from being an hour-long video. You're welcome. So, moving on to this bridge. This is a bit of a challenge to get off just because of the way that it's set up. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a little bit more work. So you have to undo that first screw, and then there's no access to the other one that's actually holding it to the guitar. So you actually have to take the saddle off completely. That's not something you can do with a drill unless you have a flex attachment or something like that. You will end up kind of burning the top of the guitar with the chucks. So don't do that. It's a lot safer and easier to just do it by hand. What I'm doing here is I'm taking these off, and then I'm reassembling the little saddle with the spring so that the parts aren't all over the place. So all the saddles have their little piece attached, and yeah, that keeps everything in order. I'm moving on here to deal with the electronics, but before I do, if you're doing a saddle set like that, be very careful because you are undoing a screw with a spring. So if you're not paying attention, you can cause the saddle itself to shoot across the room. So just be cognizant of that when you're removing those. So now I've unscrewed the front of the switch, and I'm taking the panel off the back, and my plan is pretty simple here. I'm just going to pull all of the electronics into this cavity. It's not exactly crowded. It's a very well designed set of electronics in these, so I'm going to pull them all in there and then just tape off the holes. I'm taping off the holes from the inside, of course. It just makes sense. So the knob and the switch both taped off, and now I'm taking off the jack plate, and I will pull the jack itself again right into that cavity, and then I'll just tape it off from the inside, and that'll be that. Now this thing's getting, as I said, a custom paint job on it, so in order for it to look good, I think it also needs to include the cavity cover. So we'll be doing that. I'm going to screw it right back on and paint right over it, and I'm just going to make sure that I don't have any crazy detail right over the screws there so that the direction that they're facing doesn't end up mattering. So I'll get that kind of patched back or pinned back in place here, and then we can move on to finishing off the bridge and dealing with the what I'll call the most interesting part of the disassembly, which you'll see in a moment here. So the bridge, I got those saddles off of there. Now I'm taking off the other screw that holds these things in place. Really great design from Hipshot on these. They just sit flat, nothing crazy. So pretty easy to put back after. I'm not too worried about anything there. The tough part is the ferrules. On this particular design, you can see how little there is in terms of space through the guitar in terms of drilling. So I can't use my usual trick and just put like an 1/8 inch bit in there and tap them out. So what I end up having to do is use a little Allen key, and I have to put it in at kind of an angle so that it hits one side of the ferrule, and then I'm tapping it with a fretting hammer very carefully. So that's how I'm gently removing these ferrules. I've got the guitar at an angle so there's room for them to fall out underneath. I've got it on a soft surface, so me kind of hitting it with a little bit of this percussion isn't going to cause a problem on the bottom edge. And I'm just gently tapping those out and at least loosening them. And to the extent that they don't fall out, I can go in after and just kind of grab them off the back of the guitar. Now, a couple of them actually took a little extra persuading here, so I didn't have to continue tapping, but I actually had to feed this Allen key through and kind of finish popping them off or push them out far enough that I could grab them with my hands on the other side. I didn't want to have to try and do it with pliers or anything. So that sorts that out, and then it's time to tape. And there's a fair bit of taping to be done here. First off, I'm going to tape all the areas that I don't intend to paint. So I've already gotten the cavities from the inside. Now I'm masking the ferrule holes. You can do that either by balling up tape like I'm doing now, or you can use earplugs. Small earplugs work fine for this. You can also use them for tuning peg holes if you're doing the headstock. Like I said, I don't want to take apart more than I have to on this guitar. It's set up professionally right from the factory. I don't want to mess with it. So the pickups I'm not taking out. I'm just going to tape over them like so, which makes it nice that they have these direct mount pickups. It makes my life a lot easier here. I'm going to tape over those, and next up I'll be taping over the fretboard. And then I've made kind of a determination on this that it would be really cool to do this in almost a drop top style and also a drop back style. I don't want to mess with the finish on the neck because it's already a beautiful satin, and although the owner of the guitar wants the rest of it changed, you don't really want gloss on the neck, at least in my opinion. That makes it harder to play quickly. This is the type of guitar where you want to be able to shred. Usually they have, satin or matte necks. So I'm going to leave the neck as is, and I'm actually, like I said, going to do kind of a drop top, but for the top and back. If you're following me on Instagram, you'll actually already have seen how this is starting to look. I think we're partway through the airbrush work in terms of the Instagram updates so far, but what I'm doing is I'm taping off the sides, and there's a lot of curvature to this guitar, so I've got to be very careful to properly follow those ridge lines and make sure that everything is even. So if I'm leaving just a little ridge along the edge like I am here, I have to make sure that ridge is the same size all the way around. So I spent a lot of time on this part of the project. I spent a lot of time carefully taping those ridges, using a couple different widths of tape, as you will see, and getting that all set up. You can do it a little bit easier with the little fine line tape, but I wanted the entire side done. I want the edges, the sides of the guitar to remain black, and in fact to remain a satiny black, and then the front and back of the guitar are going to have a graphic on them, and that's going to be gloss. So I'm going to have a couple different types of contrast there, both in terms of the color and the imagery on there, and also in terms of the level of sheen. And I think that's going to give a really cool effect when all's said and done. So the image in my head when I was doing this, it ended up pretty close to what I've got. This guitar at the time of me doing this voiceover is almost fully painted. It is in the clear coat stages, at least on the front and back. So we're getting there, and it's looking pretty good so far. So yeah, I'm just going to carefully run the tape along here. We'll speed this up even a little bit more. It's at about 450 right now. We'll kick it up to, I think, 600 times speed. So there we go, even faster now. But I don't want to really skip over this because it's a very important part of the project. It's a very important part of painting not only any guitar, but anything, really. If you're doing a custom paint job on anything, taping's important. You want to tape up everything where you don't want paint to go. I'm actually going to, in the next video, be starting with, well, not starting with, but at a point shortly into it, I will be taping the entire front and back and laying out my graphics. So, sometimes the taping work takes almost as long as the painting work, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a matter of patience, and it's a lesson that every custom painter basically learns the hard way at the beginning. So try to learn from my mistakes. Take it from me here. This is not a step that you want to rush. You want to make sure everything's in place. Luckily, you can always take it all off after. Tape's a lot easier to remove than paint that gets into the wrong place. So always keep that in mind. So I've got my nice little ridge line taped off there that sets up what I actually want to hit, and then I'm going to pull out my third width of tape here, the wide stuff, the classic painter's tape, and just cover up the neck so I don't have to worry about any paint going on there. For the headstock, there are a bunch of different ways you can do it. I've seen people put bags over it and stuff. What I ended up doing was just taking a chunk of saran wrap and putting that over top, a chunk of cling wrap, and that was that. So here we are, all set, ready to move on to the painting. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to give it a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe so you can see how this project turns out. It's going to be really cool. As always, have a good one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.